June 1st, 2019. The 2019 Fanime Weekly Challenge has started by that point. I, a ghoul, have made this 5-episode series that will forever invade my brainworms on and off. And that series is 7 guidances to wishful safety. So, to get around of how we get to the conceptualization of the series, we might have to go back a bit, Around the area where, March and April were a thing in 2019, it was around the time when I finished with my previous series at the time, Nemomia the Chaotic Hero, which was a series that I, haven't been my own self-imposed weekly challenge since at the time the community was kind of in a bit of a dead space. But sometime around that point, or at the very least, still working on Nemomia, I had different plans for the 2019 weekly challenge actually. Categories that I wanted to do, which is the participants, the judges, and the cheerleaders. The participants are practically self-explanatory, they're just people participating in the challenge.
The judges are...
Well, the judges, basically. Though if you're kind of wondering, I did wanted to have the judges be those who participated in 2 of the previous weekly challenges at the time, which was the 2015 one and the 2016 one. And my idea for the cheerleaders is that I just wanted them to be the hype squad for the people who are participating, really. Now, that whole plan didn't really work out too well, actually. And by that, I mean it didn't go through, really. That, the initial plan didn't go through. One of the people that I wanted to be one of the judges kind of left the Fanime community entirely. And the other person that I wanted to be the judge for the 2019 Weekly Challenge was just hey, I actually want to participate in this challenge, actually. So I was well, guess I had to drop this initial plan then. And given the fact that I also wanted to be one of the judges for the initial plan, but, had to drop the plan, and I also wanted to make it fair for people who are participating, I kind of felt I need to come up with a new Fanime idea fast! Which leads to the conceptualizing of the series. So while I was kind of conceptualizing for a new Fanime idea, there were things that I was kind of having a hyperfixation on at the time. One was Super Mario RPG, to the surprise of nobody. And another was a friend's project, which is cancelled at the moment. But yeah, those 2 were the only things that I was kind of super omega hyperfixating on at the time. I, the ultimate weirdo, was I wonder if I would combine the elements of both of these things to make my own series. With Super Mario RPG, it's taking inspiration from characters like Exor, as well as turning the initial stars into guidances. Now, given the fact that the guidances are spear-like, one could make the argument that this could be comparable to Dragon Ball, but that's besides the point. As for the aforementioned project, it was just the multi-realm elements, really. And given the elements of the latter, I actually kind of scoured through some OCs that would fit for this series. The OCs that I was able to repurpose were Mellory, Subiko, and Reparo, since I thought that they were good choices at the time. Mellory was kind of a D&D character that I sucked at playing at the time, and, I also wanted to redeem her. It was also kind of around the time where I was kind of miffed about D&D as a whole, but that's besides the point. Subiko was initially part of another story that never went into fruition. It was also when I was kind of debating whether to make that story into a kinetic visual novel or a fanime. And Reparo was kind of the most hilarious because he was kind of part of a scribble challenge that I kind of got from Hirohato, that friend of mine kind of showed me, which I kind of confused for as an OC trait. It wasn't. Really, the only two characters that were made for the series were Sanaya and Armix. Now, as for the scripting, I practically did all the scripting for all the 5 episodes on a weekend. After that, I asked my friends to see if they could voice some of the characters, as well as doing a casting call for the rest of the characters. And I once got all of my EVAs, I got them to voice all the characters, and I'd be ready to go for the weekly challenge. Mostly. So if you knew me since like at least 2018, this would probably not be that shocking to you. But if your only frame of reference of my work is the Major Silence, this might be slightly surprising. So 7 Guidances to Wishful Safety is a visual novel style Fanime. We can gather this from the clips that you're seeing right here. So what happened is that like I've made the refs for the characters, but they also worked out as sprites, so you know, I also do the whole expression change and shit. I then made the backgrounds, which are lineless, but also adding the Gaussian blur to make it slightly fancy. I also did a little bit of audio editing in Audacity, while having like the character storage and then just dragging whatever lines I need from the storage to the actual file for the episode. The VN frames and CG frames were made during the production of the week, when, you know, doing the weekly challenge, mostly. And I did all the video editing with HitFilm Express, even sometimes making the composite shots in case I want to do some keyframing motion type of deals.
Well, Jesse, this sounds super simple. I'm sure you got all the episodes done so quickly during the weekly challenge, right?
So, one thing that's kind of like a forever egg on my face is the fact that I decided to add fight scenes for the series. Now, I want to say that there's nothing wrong with adding fight scenes to a no-budget series. Hell, I had some fight scenes in the Major Silence. No, the issue with this decision is that I've decided to add fight scenes for a series that was meant to be for a Fanime weekly challenge. Alrighty, this is a recipe for disaster in terms of scheduling, but I did not know that at the time. I was very naive. And the reason why I thought I got this in the bag because, you know, I had someone who offered to help me out for animating for the series, and you know, just like,
oh yeah, you can do the fight scenes for the series.
So yeah, I, a foolish opportunist, accepted the offer. And given the fact that they just wanted to animate, you know, they don't really do feel like the scripting type of deal, I thought that maybe this would have gotten well. There was a delay for episode 2 around that point. Okay. So, that didn't pan out as I hope. The person that agreed to help me out had some IRL shit to deal with, which, you know, fair, IRL shit really do be fucky at points. And you know, ultimately in the end, episode 2's fight scene was completed, and it was ready to be uploaded, so yippee! But now for the trouble with episode 5. Good gravy. So, the person that initially agreed to help me out couldn't really do the animating for the fight scenes anymore due to the IRL shit kind of getting too much, which, you know, fair, but it's just like, okay, that's fine. Oh god, I'm gonna have to change plans, do I? Truthfully, by that point, I was at a loss. Should I have other people helping me out? Should I go back to my initial plan of having the fight scenes be in a motion comic format? What do? There was another person that, you know, offered to help out, which, you know, I quickly accepted because I was desperate at the time. However, at the time, they couldn't really do the full scene because, you know, they wanted to work on a more personal project and was also participating in Art Fight. Hell, even when we both agreed to split the fight scene in 5 parts, they couldn't still be able to fully finish it. And I think that's just on the basis that Toon Boom Harmony is actually frustrating to use when it comes to coloring. So I offered to, like, finish the coloring of their part with the 30-day trial of Toon Boom Harmony. And yeah, coloring in Toon Boom is a pain in the ass to deal with. I'm so glad that even the version of Adobe Flash that I have in my arsenal is not this frustrating. But hey, at least everyone else who has a dedicated part with the fight scene had a much better time. But oh lord, it was a doozy. That whole experience had me realizing that no one should ever do a fully animated fight scene of any sort for the weekly challenge Fanime ever again. But on the flip side, I released the final episode of 7 Guidances around October and had became one of my more proud works at the time. Yippee! You would think that that would end there, right? Right? So there were some things I wanted to do for 7 Guidances post-OG series, but, you know, never really went into fruition. Firstly, I wanted to make like an OVA thing that had like some of the people that the characters have from their own home realms, basically. I thought I'd make it a little bit more slice of life-ish compared to the OG series. But I had that on the back burner because I wanted to work on Jades and Roses, which has its own kind of worms for the production history. Secondly, because of the whole modding community, I kind of wanted to make like a Friday Night Funkin' mod for 7 Guidances. Like, I was interested in doing that at the time. With that said, I have no idea what the fuck I was doing because I was trying to make a sound font out of Supiko's voice, which didn't work, by the way. I also had 2 songs planned, but that's about it. Like, this whole mod idea never went into fruition. Then again, with how things turned out for the FNF modding scene, I'd say it's probably for the best that it never happened. But yeah, those were the 2 smaller ideas I wanted to do for 7 Guidances. Now we have to address the whole ass elephant in the room. Me being a little bit ambitious around the time, I had the bright idea of making an official season 2 for 7 Guidances to Wishful Safety. Trying to do that would turn out to be a gigantic mistake. I wanted it to be like, you know, have it take place of when the final episode ended, at least sometime after. Which, you know, at the time was kind of like beyond my usual scope of what I could usually do for a Fanime around that point. So, you know, I wanted to work off of that. Firstly, I tried to make like a plot skeleton since that's how some of my friends were operating at the time when it comes to like, you know, making something that'll be like the backbones of their work. And I even got some designs for some of the new characters, some of which were characters I got from OC Design Traits, which I kinda miss doing, but that's just the point. One particular character I designed was kind of based off of a dream that was kind of 7 Guidances related. So yeah, doing all of that, needless to say, I was excited. But then came the saw that was slowly chopping off my legs. Firstly, I found out that the original VA for Supiko had became like a professional anime voice actress. She kind of voiced in some sort of like, I don't know, some isekai adjacent show, I don't remember what it's called, but it was some character that's like has like a bit of a major role. I have asked her if she would still be willing to be voicing Supiko for the planned season 2 at the time. She did reply as soon as she can, but like she also told me that like she really can't because she only does like paid projects these days, which fair, honestly. So yeah, I wish her the best of luck and, you know, thought about like, okay, maybe I should look for new VAs for Supiko. By the way, the OG VA voiced in Dragon Ball Daima, by the way. Secondly, I did not take some of the issues that some of my friends had with the skeleton all that well, if I'm honest. Now, thinking about it, I think it was because of the fact that both of us were going through some shit that, you know, I don't want to get into, like, in this video. Let's just say the Mother Nature kicked our asses. And truthfully, yeah, the skeleton was not all that great in retrospect, like, it was kind of ass, bro! But still, I cried like a bitch because I got some critiques on something I was proud of at the time. But, you know, I thought that maybe I could get back on my feet and, you know, try to rework some shit. Then, there was the third reason. A personal situation. I am not gonna get into any details about this out of respect for those involved with it, but after all that had happened, it has gotten to the point where I just started to feel awkward about the planned season 2, and later, the original 7 Guidances as a whole. That last bit was the point where I lost my legs and became a goddamn amputee. Metaphorically, to be clear. And thus, season 2 was canned. But I was very much not happy about the fact that I was feeling awkward about 7 guidances to visual safety, which resulted into me doing a lot of stupid shit. So I had a lot of ideas that I kind of flip-flopped during the course of 2023 all the way up to 2025. Number 1, the personalized copies of the OG series. So I wanted to do this thing where I make personalized versions of the OG series with the voices as well as some of the fight scenes for episode 5 get switched in and out. Really, the main inspiration for this fuckery was the every copy of Mario 64 is personalized copy pasta. And there would have been one personalized copy each for A, myself and those that are outside of the Fanime community, B, one group, and C, another group. That shit is kind of insane, but this is the one I kind of flip-flop on this the most. In fact, I almost went back to this idea when I learned the fact that you could have multiple dubbed audio for the English language alone for YouTube videos now. Which is hilarious, but also would be beneficial for me in more ways than one. Although with episode 5's case, those would be their own videos because I still wanted to do the whole thing of like switching out like 1 or 2 parts of the fight scene to make it more personalized copies, and YouTube is not cool as Newgrounds when it comes to switching out videos. But yeah, I also thought about like asking some of the VAs from the Major Silence to help me out with this bullshit when it comes to like voicing the characters, namely 3, but still. But yeah, like, I am sort of like thinking about that, but I also thought about like the whole thing of doing like a fan dubbing test where the winners could have their own audio tracks of the episodes with the English audios, which is like Canada, UK, etc. Like, I am kind of leaning towards that idea more and more, like, thinking about it. Number 2, the remake that was supposed to be a Fanime before I make it into an RPG before it's in limbo. So I made my own little redesigns for the 7 Guidances crew, and that's when I thought about the idea of making a revamp for the series. Like, I thought something like that could be in order. I have thought about making it a Fanime with multiple voice versions. You know, personalized copies and shit. Then I thought about, you know, having it be a one voice version for the time. I probably would have like gone back to the multi-voice versions once the original voice version is done. But ultimately, I just kind of like thought about the idea of making it an RPG because, you know, Super Mario RPG was a game, so might as well just go with the like RPG stuff. Heck, at that point, I thought about like using Utel voice banks to do like an Undertale voice blips before I fell into the Utel rabbit hole, which is its own story. But also, I had ideas for characters that could have been like bosses and shit. And you know, it would have been fine. But then I tried to pair this up with an even bigger mess. That is the Project Guidance Division fuckfest. Good lord. So alongside with the RPG, I have conceptualized 3 self-bootlegs of the original 7 Guidances. And during that point, I thought one of the VAs could voice in one of the bootlegs, 2 VAs could voice another bootleg, and one of the VAs could probably pick like either of the 3, and the rest of the characters for each bootleg could have a completely new VA. And if you think that is utterly insane, check this shit out. Some of the characters that I had planned for the initial planned season 2 before it was cancelled, yeah, those characters would have been in those bootlegs and the RPG as well. Bruh! And the last thing I have thought of that's kind of different is a different 7 Guidances successor starring a different cast of characters. This one I don't have much to talk about because I kind of practically shelved this idea a week after I conceptualized it. So for context, I was watching like Amelie Dory's video on White Album 2. And I, a weirdo, have mainly took note of the fact that it's not exactly a sequel to the original White Album, but instead, it's mainly a spiritual successor that takes place in the same world, albeit it takes place 2 decades after the original. Why am I even talking about this? Because I have thought about doing something similar, but with 7 guidances. So it's still kind of like a sequel, but instead of starring the original game, it would have starred like a completely new cast of characters that we had to follow, with the gender ratio being the inverse of the OG gang. Basically, I was trying so hard to find an excuse to have a completely new set of VAs. But likewise, I also wanted to be a thing that I could welcome those who have not seen the original 7 guidances. You know, finding different ways to introduce folks to the 7 guidances concept. Sort of like of how people can play White Album 2 without needing to play the original. But with that said, like with this idea, as well as almost everything else, I think I just kind of burnt myself out from 7 guidances, so I just kind of shelved this one.
Really?
Would I even go back to this idea? Truthfully, I don't know.
So then, now what?
I may have put myself through the ringer just so I could redeem 7 guidances for not only myself, but maybe some other people. But really, I'm actually at a point where I just want to mainly focus on newer projects at this point. Hell, the Major Silence is practically my baby right now. However, I will admit, there is a part of me that still cherishes 7 guidances, which was why that I was feeling upset about the fact that I was feeling awkward about it for the longest while. I may have to start moving on from the dumb shit I was doing in order to redeem the series for mostly me, but other people of mine as well.
But, you know, there's still some things I want to do when it comes to 7 guidances.
For one, I kind of want to do like the whole mostly 1-for-1 visual novel adaptation for the original series. Like hell, I even had like the text planned out, which is essentially the same script with some grammar fixes and some extra scenes that weren't in the original series. I'll probably get back to it once I'm not too swamped with Fanime work. I will say that there won't be any voice acting in this adaptation, I'll just say that right now. But I would like to allow like most of the OG VAs that are still around to edit the code and add their own voice actings for their, you know, if they want to make their own personalized copies of the visual novel adaptation. I feel like making a personalized copy of a visual novel would probably be more easier than making a personalized copy of a fanime, really. Now for 2, the fan dubbing contest. Honestly, like the more I thought about this idea, the more I kind of like it. Heck, back when I was doing the multi-version fuckfest, I actually re-exported the audio of the episodes that's only for sound effects and music, and I exported them in both file formats, which is both MP3 and OGG, which in hindsight might be used for something like the contest idea. I'll probably put this back in the oven to let it bake for a little bit before I, like, you know, go back to actually being able to present it to the world. And for 3, the allowance of fan projects and spiritual successors. Honestly, this is something that I kind of want to do, as I was inspired by how Zune does it for fan projects for Toho. Like, I want to allow those that liked 7 guidances to make their own fan projects and spiritual successors. I actually did have like a guideline set up on my site, but I do kind of want to revise it to make it, you know, actually viable to read. And you know, once I got the guidelines done and, you know, have it be far, far into the future, I do want to host some sort of 7 guidances fan fest for things like that. However, this is something that I'll probably have to put back in the fridge for later, but, you know, once it'll probably be back in business for when I get the proper guidelines done. So yeah, all in all, there are some things I still want to do for 7 guidances. However, with one exception, a lot of these are kind of just mainly events that, you know, I want people to have fun with. But other than that, I think I might be done with trying to do a lot of the bullshit for now. I have long since accepted the fact that the original Season 2 that I had planned will never happen, probably for the best. The RPG is in limbo unless I have someone who has experience with RPG Maker helping me out. The multi-audio version podcast is something that I flip-flopped before I decided it would be funny to make it a contest that I'll post later. And the successor starring the new characters was a little underbaked, and the self-bootlegs were just too much. So yeah, in retrospect, I was being very ridiculous when it came to a fucking 5-episode Fanime. I do kind of wish that I kind of came to this conclusion sooner rather than later, but real talk, I was just scrambling to make shit work back in 2023 because I was so desperate, dude. And it's not just with 7 guidances as well, but that is a can of worms for another therapy session. But hey, what's done is done, and despite everything, 7 guidances of visual safety still has a place in my heart. Sure, I am currently working on a series that is way better than it at this point, but, you know, for what I wanted back in 2019 for the weekly challenge, it served the purpose that I needed when I had to change the initial plans for the challenge.
But also, I would like to see what other people, namely fans and friends, would do with it.
Hence why I even thought about the fan dubbing contest and the fan work guidelines. So here's the thing that I want to say. Regardless if you're only familiar with my old Fanime works like Careflops and Sour Candy Filled Donuts, or if you're only familiar with my recent Fanime works like The Mage of Silence, regardless with the amount of fuckery that I kind of put myself through for the past 2 years, almost, I still hope that you would check out 7 Guidances, and all in all, I hope you would still enjoy it. Regardless if it's the original Fanime, or, you know, the future VN 1-for-1 adaptation. Thank you for listening. Also, I could finally edit the one thing to note for this 7 Guidances and page on Fanime Realm. Holy fucking shit!
Hey there, look there, I think that we're lost. It's not safe, but I think we'll make it. Don't be scared, cause we will make it through. Let's all form a path, I think. Hey there, look there, I see a guidance. Let's take it before it's all gone now. It's a rough path that we all chose. And hey there, don't get lost. 始まるよ